hit a brick wall with my work. I'm getting very angsty, I'm rather tired, I'm a bit irritable, I keep staring at my paperwork, I can't really get anything down anymore. So that means that when I get to this point, it means I need a break, I need to go outside, touch some grass, as they say, get into nature and just give myself a break, because no matter how hard I try, I'm not going to get any more words down on paper. It's a 15-minute walk to the nearest woodland. And here we are. It's so serene and so beautiful. There's a long road that cuts down to more woodland, but it's just such a peaceful place to be. I always say to people that when you're writing, it's so important to remember to have like regular breaks. It's really, really important because my dogs are resisting, because those breaks will be the difference between, in my opinion, an amazing story and possibly a boring, mundane story. So what I do is I just grab my dogs and we walk into the woods, and it just feels so free. I just feel so relaxed as soon as I'm here. They're happy, I'm happy. There's Guinness down there, leading the way as usual. Pretty weird, but even though I live in such a small city at the moment, it's a really small city. Everything is just no more than an hour away, so everything's really close. I've lived in much bigger cities. I'm from a much bigger city, but my friends who are here, they always make comments about how I live so far away and why am I so far away, but I don't consider myself to be far away at all, because I've always lived near woodland. In Nigeria, I've lived near woodland. Oh, there's another spider's web. It's a trap. There is another spider's web right there, so I'm going to avoid it. So I've always lived near woodland, to be honest. I've always lived near the woods, and I find it so therapeutic to be near the woods. And I honestly don't understand writers, especially creative people, who live in particularly built up areas with no nature. And when I talk about nature, I'm not talking about just parks. I mean the wild, I mean woods, unpaved pathways, huge trees, towering trees, you know, rocks, and that sort of thing. So that's what I'm used to. And even in Nigeria, although we had a massive garden, I was always outdoors, and it was quite a rough garden as well. It wasn't like a pretty landscape garden because we liked it quite natural, and it was such a great way to grow up. And just being outdoors will lend its way to so many new ideas. And I think actually that as a writer, that's one of the reasons why I have so many ideas, because a lot of my ideas that I've had all my life were ideas I got when I was a kid. All these ideas I'm working on now have always come to me in childhood, and usually when I was outdoors. Amazing to me how many ideas can be gained whilst walking. I just walk and walk and walk, and I just take note of little things around me, and they just spark new ideas. They don't necessarily clear up the writer's block, but they give me even more ideas, which I think is absolutely fascinating. Occasionally, some teenagers do make their way in there. They sneak in there. And that's why there's a bit of a space between the bars. I think people do sneak in there, but they do keep boarding it up again. I think just more for safety reasons than anything else. But, you know, you have all these objects and things around you that could just give you so much inspiration, and all the inspiration you could ever want. Never be afraid to just stop. Sorry, I have to watch my step as well. Never be afraid to just stop and go for a walk. Now, this woodland I'm in, these woods, they are known for having wild boar, but because it's not quite late enough in the day, they wouldn't be out yet. But I think that extra excitement as well of having wild animals around and possible chance encounters always makes it slightly more risky. So when I say go into the woods as opposed to going into a park, that's what I mean. Parks are very sanitized, they've been cleaned up, you have no huge roots that can, trip you up, you have no massive trees, it's all very clean and safe and, in my opinion, very sanitized. And that's fine, and that's your thing, but I think that's why I've always preferred the woods to everything else. Pretty much just walk until my head is clear of all the noise and chaos of the world, and I just feel relaxed. Sometimes when I get a bit bored, I walk down to this little bit here. Now I like it because it's quite rough terrain, well, in my opinion. Some people will have rougher, but that's fine. And I just love it because it's just narrow. You have the, down there is a very steep fall, so we have to be really careful. And then you have these extremely narrow paths. And you also have these amazing, spaces. I don't know what they're called, crevices maybe, in the rocks. And I've had friends go in and explore them and they say they're absolutely fascinating. So everything, every space, every rock, every leaf, the noise, the sounds, everything can serve as some form of inspiration if you let it. And once in a while, I'll just sit down and just listen to the sounds of the forest and just be quiet and still for a while and just relax. And it's really good. And I think that if we all did this once in a while, just went into the woods and sat there, I feel we'd have far less problems in the world. And people would find a natural way of just dealing with their problems and dealing with all their issues. My favorite season to write in is actually not summer. I actually find it harder to write in summer. My favorite season to write in is actually winter, and I don't know why. And I think because winter forces us, especially people in the colder climates, it forces us to be indoors. I write better. Even in Nigeria, when it was really hot, even when we had thunderstorms, I would suddenly get all these amazing ideas. I would have like a bucket load of ideas where before I didn't have any. So I would say I am getting used to writing in summer now after so many years. It's a very interesting season. It has a lot of potential, but I think you have to know where your limits are, how comfortable you are writing in summer, and also I think how you would handle things like heat, extreme weather, because I think that is something that is a factor that can severely impact productivity. In terms of writing, I tend to think of summer as a more romantic season, so I think it's probably better for romance writers and probably erotica writers, whilst I write fantasy, and I think the winter and the autumn, the darker months, suits fantasy much better. And a lot of my books, especially when I went to live in London, I transferred the scene from a very hot climate to a very cold climate. Like The Dwellers was first written in a very tropical climate, but when I moved it across to London, when I started writing it in London, when I started rewriting it in London, suddenly it was winter, and I just moved it to a winter climate because when I started writing The Dwellers, it was an extremely cold day, and it was actually snowing as well. But overall, in terms of writing seasons, I do prefer winter. It's very dark. There's a lot of malice in the air. My characters tend to be full of vengeance, and they tend to have very malicious thoughts in the winter. And I believe nothing has softened them. Not the chance of romance, the chance of, meeting the one, nothing like that. My fantasy characters tend to stay very hardened, and they tend to stay on track as well. So I don't tend to write particularly romantic characters. Although some readers have said that some of my characters are quite romantic, I suppose, and quite, I think the word is dishy. So, but in my mind, they stay committed. They stay committed to their goal. That's what's important for me. The beauty of this is there's so many little hidden places, so many little hidden crevices and areas you'd never discover in such a long time. It would take you ages to discover, because these woods are very, very extensive, and they go, I think, into the north of the country as well. And that's the beauty of it. And then you come out to this bit here, and suddenly you can see you're surrounded by hills. No matter where you look, you're surrounded by hills. For me, I think it's the little things in the woods that stir up emotion in me. The sound of the forest floor, underfoot, the branches, the trees reaching out to each other as if they were old friends. And it's really strange, but sometimes I half expect some mysterious creatures to pop out from the branches, popping up from the tree trunks of a tree. And I talk about it as if it's a typical thing, but I know it isn't. But that's how my imagination works. And imagination is a really powerful thing. Going into the woods when I have a writer's block brings out this feeling of peace in me. And I'm so grateful for it. I'm grateful for the experience as well as the inspiration I get. Even if the inspiration doesn't come in droves, I feel very relaxed by the end of it, and I'm ready to work again. So if you ever get stuck, I say try it. Go out, go for a walk, grab your dogs. I feel we should all be as close to nature as possible anyway.